Hi everybody, this is Dana Childress, and I have a question for you. What would you do? So you arrive at the family's home, and you knock on the door, and you have to wait a little while, and you hear some little feet scattering inside, and when the door opens, the adult doesn't answer the door. A child answers the door, and you say, "Okay, hi, I'm here to see so-and-so. Is your mom home?" And the child says, "No." Or maybe the child says, "Yes," but she's asleep. And you say, "Okay, well, is there any other grown-ups here you can get and let them know that I'm here?" And the child says no. So the big question is, what do you do? So if you haven't been in this situation, you probably will be at one time or another as an early intervention service provider. And you have to figure out how to handle that moment because, one, you're there to get the early intervention visit done. And two, there is a possibility that at least the child that answered the door, is unsupervised. And so you can't really, knowing that, you really can't leave until you figure out what's going on. So there are a couple of different ways you could approach it. I mean, the first idea would be to talk to the child and say, "Can you go get your mommy?" and ask her to come to the door. Tell her that I'm here. Tell her Miss Dana is here. And then keep your fingers crossed that the child does it and that the child comes back to the door to let you know what's going on. And even keep your toes crossed that the mother gets up and comes. Because it could be that the mother's not asleep and the child's wrong. You don't know what's happening in that home, but you need to try to figure that out. If nobody comes to the door, or if the child comes back to the door and says, "My mommy's not getting up," you don't know if the mother's asleep or if there could be something else happening. So then you've got a few options because you've really got to figure something out. You can kind of call into the home, call the mother's name and hope she hears you, which is something I've done before. You could, I suppose, step into the home to make sure everything's okay, but that's not probably the best idea because especially if it's a new family's home, if you don't have permission to go in there, I don't think I would step across that door. If it could be a trespassing issue, we don't want to do that. It could be a safety issue because you don't know what's happening. So you have to figure out kind of what your next move is. You can call the home. That's one idea. So use your phone to call the family's home, call the mother's cell phone, try to get her attention that way. There's a couple different ways you can do it, but you have to remember you really can't leave yet in this situation. So a couple of other ideas that I would give you. One that I know I would do, is I would call my supervisor and say, "This is the deal. This is what's happening. What do you advise?" Could be that the supervisor will come out to the home and help you problem solve if she or he is nearby. Could be that she'll give you some other advice. I would wait on the porch and I would tell the child, "We're going to leave the door open so I can see when your mommy comes to the door, but you're really leaving the door open so you can supervise the children." If you have other contacts that you can call, I would call them. If there's a spouse, a partner, a family friend, a neighbor, grandma, if you have their number, call them and say tell them what's happening and get their advice. Ask them to come over because you don't know if the children are supervised and you don't know if the parent is okay. When all else fails and you can't get a hold of somebody, you might have to call for help. And calling for help means you might have to call the police. And that is an incredibly difficult situation. So do get the advice of somebody else in your program before you make that move. But if this situation is persisting and you can't get a hold of the parent in the home, you can't get anybody else's help, then you can't leave these children unsupervised. It could be that the parent is having a medical emergency and needs help. You just don't know. So in the last resort, and you got to call for help, make that call. Document it. Make sure it is well documented in the chart. Follow up afterwards to make sure you know what happened, because that's really all that you can do in this situation. Your priority is to ensure the children's safety in this situation and to protect your own. So I'd love to know what you would do if you were in this situation. If you've been in it before, how did you handle it? Share your ideas on the blog and let's all learn from each other. Bye.